Hey guys, welcome or welcome back. Tisha here, back with another The Sound of Gravel reading. Do me a favor and hit the like button as we jump into this. Now, here's the thing. I had to take a break, you guys, because that last chapter ticked me off. This is the same day. After this, I'm going to go grab something to eat and think about things. Even me getting ready to pick up this book, I find myself being anxious because it's just chapter after chapter of crap. Now, I keep on talking about Irene and how comes Irene didn't, put this in the book. And I don't know what your response is because I'm recording this in the same day. And the first, or the most recent one was released on Monday, which means this is going to be seen on Wednesday. So here's my thing. I started thinking about it, right? As I was taking my break. And based on the reaction that Kathy and I believe her name was Suzanne had to their 3 children, telling them what was going on with Lane, I do not think that Irene knew about this. I do not think that Irene knew about this part of the situation until it was said, because it's clear that the family doesn't even know. So if the other siblings don't know, and if your answer is to protect him and to believe him and to give him another chance because, you forgive and you forget, then that would explain why in Irene's book, this wasn't mentioned until much later on, because the wives kind of protected him, right? Which I still have some, things that I wonder about Irene, but it's making me say, focus on who the mother of Ruthie is, which is Kathy. So Kathy is getting side-eyed left and right by me. Let's go ahead and get into this next chapter. At this point, everything's been heavy, so hopefully it's not too heavy. We are on part 4, breaking. It says Elena and Micah in front of the house in LeBaron, 1986. I don't even understand why she said who was in these pictures, because she blurred out their faces, but there you go. Chapter 29. Over the next few months, I did what I could to avoid Lane during his rare visits home. In the fall, Alejandra's family returned to LeBaron, and Mom enrolled me in 5th grade and Aaron in 3rd at Alma Dare LeBaron, a low-cost private school named after the LeBaron founder, my grandfather. The school across the street from my dad's church and boasting the same white stucco walls had been built while we were living in California in El Paso. Because their families didn't have the extra welfare money we did, Sally and Maria went to the Mexican public school across the highway, and I found myself missing our time in New Mexico as I entered a classroom where I didn't know any of the other children. But all the classes at Alma Dare were taught by mothers from the church, which made the situation much easier. Sally, Maria, and I spent time together whenever we didn't have to babysit or attend church services. There's a camaraderie that happens there. There's a bond that happens when you've been through the same thing and there's someone else who can relate to the things that you've been through. So it's like they've got their own little, safety net in each other. So I can see why they're hanging out with each other, especially because their mothers failed them. On Friday nights, we dressed in our Sunday best and took square dance lessons at the church from Lane's mother. We shuffled awkwardly through the Virginia reel, the foxtrot, the two-step, and the waltz. I wish I would know if his mom knew about the stuff that her son was doing. Anyway, my half-sister, Natalia and Brenda, would join us for this weekly ritual of watching and laughing at the boys who hadn't yet grown into their Wrangler jeans and cowboy hats. On weekends, we went to rodeos our relatives held at different ranches on the outskirts of town and rode borrowed horses along the dirt roads through vast, dry landscapes of mesquite and cacti. While I kept myself distracted from my troubled home life, Matt was experiencing a very different kind of struggle. Even though I hated how much he teased my siblings and me, I had to admit that my oldest brother was smart. He had always performed exceptionally well in school. He had learned to read and write early, excelled in math, and had been on the honor roll consistently since first grade. While some parents might have seen Matt's grades as a reason to nurture his intelligence and keep him in good schools, for Mom and Lane, this meant that by the time Matt was 12, he had acquired all the skills he needed. What? So you're doing great in school, and I think you got everything you need to know. So more than likely, they're probably going to take him out of school. They took him out of school before he finished the 6th grade, and he never went back. Lane said it was more important that Matt and several of his stepbrothers pick and sell pine nuts all over the Western United States to help provide for the family. So it's more important that because you want to keep procreating, that because you want to keep having relations with these moms and producing all these children for your kingdom, that you prevent your children from developing and growing into individuals that can think for themselves and be better than what you are. You rather have them sell pine nuts than be educated. Got it. That makes a lot of sense. But there were more to Matt's troubles, much more, as I learned one Sunday afternoon in the middle of winter. The bitter bite of a frosty, wet, cold snap had washed away the autumn leaves, and once again the barrel heater was working overtime in the corner of our living room. The smell of burning wood mingled with the scent of roasted red chili peppers and warm corn tortillas. Mom had made enchiladas for lunch, which meant spicy red sauce and homemade white cheese layered between corn tortillas and topped with a fried egg. The rest of us having eaten and her nursing of Elena complete. Mom finally had time to eat herself. She handed me the baby to burp and sat down to a quiet meal alone. Mom hadn't even taken a bite when Matt charged through the kitchen door, bringing with him a whining gust of winter wind. Mom's hand stopped before the fork reached her mouth, her eyes following her son as he paced frantically in front of the table, his wet rubber-soled tennis shoes squeaking over the cement floor. Matt's face was bright red from the cold. The acne on his chin and forehead had a purplish hue, and his expression so twisted in anger, it looked as if he were wearing a scary Halloween mask. For the first time in my life, my brother frightened me. He put his hands on the plastic chair opposite Mom and leaned hard onto it. "I'm not working for Lane anymore," he said, his voice even more powerful. Mom's eyes widened and her chin doubled as her head drew back. "He never pays me for my work, and I'm sleeping in a camper in the back of a truck in the middle of the winter." Matt paused to take a breath, and Mom just stared at him. "I'm going to San Diego to work with my brothers," he said defiantly. Mom placed her fork on her plate, cleared her throat, and replied calmly, "This makes me feel like something else is going on. Look, Matt, you know that those government checks are barely enough money to feed us. This family depends on you now." I was surprised by the indifference in Mom's voice, as if she was deaf to any criticism of Lane. Of course, she doesn't want to hear criticism of Lane. If she can handle what he did to her child and still be okay with that man, I don't got it for Kathy. I don't got it for Kathy. I'm feeling myself get upset again. Let me calm down. "You're doing a real good job," she said quietly. "Don't turn your back on us now." Matt threw off his jacket, scraped the chair across the floor, and sat down, tapping his toes on the cement floor. His eyes scanned the kitchen nervously as he chewed his fingernails as he considered his options. "Besides," said Mom, her voice raising, "I wouldn't dream of letting you go off into a big city of your own. You're 14. There are temptations out there you do not even understand." This lady. This lady is a piece of work. Kathy is a piece of work. I'm sorry. I know that she was brought up in a cult and yada yada goes and blase, but her parents left. This is what she wanted. This is what she chose. She wasn't born into it. So Kathy, I'm side-eyeing you, girl. On my own? He shouted. Mom, Lane leaves me alone in the States all the time. He left me in Hugo and Santa Fe for 2 weeks. We slept in the bed of a camper with nothing to keep us warm but 2 sleeping bags. I almost froze my butt off. Nothing to cook, no water, no way to wash ourselves or our clothes. We looked like a couple of damn chinos. Oh, wait, did I say that right? Cochinos? Cochinos? Don't you cuss in front of me, Mom said angrily, leaning forward and meeting his stare with her own. I'm your mother. Okay, fine. You show me some respect. I don't care how mad you are at me. She shoved her plate to the middle of the table. But Mom, he didn't leave us 1 cent. Not 1 cent, Mom. Matt was on the verge of tears. My heart bled for him. If we hadn't sold a few pine nuts every day, we would have starved. Oh, stop it, she snapped. You aren't going to starve. Stop exaggerating. You should be counting your blessings. We don't have lots, but we have never starved. You've never starved because you got food stamps. You've never starved because you got your kids eating like the most basic of the basics. You sound crazy. Matt bowed his head and began to weep. Mom, I can't stand it anymore. I hate Lane. I hate him. Matt's shaggy hair shook with his body each time he let out a sob. I wanted to cry with him, but even more, I wanted our mother to take him in her arms and say she was sorry for the ordeal she had put him through. Like I said in the last reading, hold your baby and tell her you're sorry, this isn't her fault. But she doesn't do this. It seems like the only person she wants to hold and console is Lane, because Lane was crying. Even though your son is here with heartbroken, telling you the things that are going wrong for him. Lauren said he paid me $25 a day while he teaches me drywall, Matt said. He told me I could live with him, sleep on the couch in his apartment. Lauren was one of my dad's sons, a few years older than Matt. He and several other half-brothers had left LeBaron a few years earlier to work construction in Southern California, and my brother wanted to follow their footsteps. The fact that he's 14 and you've pulled him out of school and he has, let him go. Matt rested his elbows on the table, rubbed his swollen eyes with his palms, and continued to cry. The more he did, the more Mom kept her eyes fixed on the table. Mom, don't you see? If I'm actually getting paid for the work I do, I can help out more with the family, he murmured. The dollar goes a lot further down here, and all of my brothers are there. It's not like I'm going to be on my own, you know. My mother raised her head and leaned back in the chair. Let's talk to Lane about it tomorrow. Why do you have to talk to Lane about it? Just let him go. Especially because technically Lane is not his father. Let him go. And I wouldn't normally say that because I love my bonus mom. But my bonus mom treats me like I'm a child that she birthed. So tomorrow night is my night. I'm not talking to Lane about nothing. Good job. I don't care one tiny bit about what that man wants to do. Matt stared at Mom as she stared right back. After a few long minutes of silence, it seemed that something had been communicated that I didn't quite understand. Lauren said they need me right away. I can take a bus to San Diego border tonight. Matt lifted his jacket from the back of his chair and headed down the hall to the kids' room. I watched as Mom slowly pulled the cold plate of enchiladas back in front of her. Take a shower and I'll give you a haircut before you leave so you don't look like an orphan when you get there. I wonder if Lane did something to him and she just never told her. It's making me wonder what's happened, y'all. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I remember Mom separating Matt's wet hair into clumps, the snips of the scissors, and the wavy clips of hair floating to the cement floor. Soon, her mint green suitcase was packed and standing at Matt's side in front of the door, and then we were saying goodbye to my brother, encircling him as he stood with his hand on the doorknob. "Hey, Matt," Luke said, big-eyed and stoic. "Where you going this time?" The wind blew through the barrel heater's rusty cylinder chimney and filled the living room with a hollow, ghostly whimper. Matt put his arm around our brother and gave him a sideways hug. "I'm gonna go to San Diego," Matt said with a closed-lip smile. "California? That's where I was born, right, Matt? I was born there, right?" "That's right, brother. That's where you were born." A proud smile spread across Luke's face. Matt reached down to give me a hug. My throat hardened and my eyelids stung. I so wanted him to take me with him. He hugged the others, then lifted up on his soles and embraced Mom tightly. With his head buried in her neck, I heard him promise he'd call her and be back at the holidays. "Yes," said Mom when they separated. She put her hands on his shoulders and spoke in a faraway voice. "Make sure you call Maudie's collect as soon as you get there so we can know that you made it." Matt adjusted the visor on his hat and just looked at her. They seemed to be having another private exchange. "Well, I better get going. I'll miss my bus." He gripped Mom's suitcase and walked out the door. Luke, Aaron, Micah, and I ran to the window and watched as his figure grew smaller and smaller. A steady wind blew over the tall, dry weeds in the yard as Matt walked through them, their tips bent to the muddy ground as if they were borrowing. I breathed heavily on the glass and fogged the pain. By the time it cleared, Matt was gone. Later we learned that it had taken all night for his bus to reach Tijuana. Matt walked his 14-year-old self to the border crossing alone, but as soon as he entered California, there was Lauren, just as promised, waiting to greet him. Our half-brother picked Matt up on the side of the road. The two drove straight to a construction site, and Matt started working that very day. Wow. He didn't even get a chance to really settle in. My gracious, like, what in the world? I want to know what, like, was the final straw for him. Chapter 30. After Matt left, life became even more chaotic and crazy. So much so that I found myself wishing that my older brother, who had teased me relentlessly for most of my childhood, was still around to help me deal with the insanity. I barely went to school. We were either traveling with Lane to work in the States, or Mom took Elena and went with him while I stayed home to watch my other siblings. She's not in a place where CPS can be called, so I guess she's enjoying being able to follow her man around. She learned nothing from doing this the last time. When I did go to class, I was confused by the lessons and completely clueless about what was expected of me. I avoided Lane, and initially he left me alone. Almost every night, I'd dream of Matt's coming back to take me with him to California. But as day would break, I'd awake, and no such dreams were beyond hope. My only options, it seemed, were to get married or to convince Mom to leave Lane. The first was unsavory and the second impossible. Still, I had to try. The spring I turned 12, I found myself a passenger in Lane's truck, driving one of our many drivers from Albuquerque to LeBaron. Lane's old white pickup had been replaced by a small black Datsun with a gash in the driver's door so deep it made the whole truck look like a crushed tin can. So she's driving with this man even though her mother knows he's done the things that has been done. We were driving a load of old items Lane had bought or scavenged: car parts, washing machine parts, old heaters, used toilet bowls, broken appliances of all kinds. Mom was in the microbus just behind us, carrying another load of worn out MISCELLANY. Why does that look weird to me? I ain't even gonna try. No. Alexa, how do you pronounce MISCELLANY? Alexa, don't. Miscellany. Got it. Worn out miscellany. I got to look that up because I don't know what that is. Lane always planned to resell everything once he fixed it up in his shop. But I knew the bulk of it would end up in the growing pile of rusted metal behind our house. Lane had a knack for taking something broken and turning it into junk. The air in the small cab smelled of blackening banana peel and stale automotive grease. I had barely fallen asleep with my hands folded across my stomach and my knees pressed up against the passenger side door. Oh, Lord. When I felt something between my legs, I was trapped. Lane had reached his large swollen hand over the brake lever and placed the heel of it on the crotch of my jeans. As he began rubbing his hand back and forth, I decided that this time I'd do something different. This time I didn't push him away. I had a trap of my own. I pretended to sleep, as angry as it made me, letting him touch me there until my stomach was full of knots and my underwear wet and sticky. Oh no. I thought that every second he touched me would offer further proof to Mom that Lane was a filthy liar. I thought about shoving Mom my soiled underwear, forcing her to see what Lane had done to me. I was sure that she wouldn't be able to turn away from this fresh evidence. She would have to leave him, and we would have to move our family to San Diego and live with Matt. I'm going to tell y'all like this. Because I've already told my mother, and my mother is not believing me time and time again, I would have probably did the same thing and then try to break one of his fingers. Because at this point, this is too much. Like, you know, you've done nothing. You haven't helped in any type of ways or anything like that. So it's time for me to take things into my own hand and break something or scream. Man, I get it. She's young. We'll see what she did. Woo. Mom must have flashed her headlights because it wasn't long before we were pulling over at a rest area. I found Mom in the ladies' room. "Can I ride with you?" I asked. My voice was serious, and my mom stopped washing her hands the second she saw my face in the mirror. I hesitated, suddenly afraid of confronting her the way I'd imagined. I wasn't sure I could talk to her about this one more time. I didn't want to tell her again that she'd been wrong about her husband. "Mom, you can ride with me." I didn't have to say anything. She knew. That trip back to LeBaron was the last we would ever take in the Volkswagen microbus. Just after we arrived home, it finally broke down for good. Mom parked it behind the house alongside all the other rusted metal we had accumulated back there. Not long afterward, its molted white rooftop began to disintegrate. Its tires grew flat, and the van started to look as if it were melting in the tall weed patch around it. We repurposed it as a place to store old clothes. The microbus was replaced by a two-door Chevy Chevette, the first in a long line of battered cars Mom would drive until they were broken beyond repair. A subcompact car wasn't exactly a substitute for a van, but that didn't keep us from taking our usual trips to and from the States. The whole family just packed itself into the Chevette. I hope I'm saying that right. Chevette, clown car style. The tiny vehicle served another purpose. Serious private conversations could be held there, away from the noise and the ears of a large family. Small, serious gatherings I came to call the Chevette tribunals. A few weeks after the microbus last Albuquerque trip, Mom called a meeting in the Chevette to discuss Lane's actions. Lane and Mom sat in the front seat while I sat behind them. Mom announced that the subject of the meeting would not be that she and Lane were splitting up. They couldn't. The children needed a dad, but how we needed to move on from the unfortunate patch as a family. "Well, you said the next time you did it, you'd leave him, and your daughter knew you were lying, and here you are proving that you were lying." Open and honest communication is the key to healing, Mom announced over her shoulder as Lane in the driver's seat peered at me through the rearview mirror. Let me tell you something. This isn't the way you protect your kid. You don't protect your kid by confronting him about it, but making it seem like you're on his side. We're not even making it, but being on his side. This is harming her. You have her sitting there with the man that's done this to her as he looks at her and intimidates her in this seat. Kathy, you're such a horrible mom. I'ma say it. I'm sorry. This is horrible. This is horrible parenting. I averted my eyes, staring at my stepfather's plaid cowboy shirt, his belly bulging into the steering wheel of the small car. I really don't see why you're making such a big deal of this, he said with a smile. I couldn't believe he could be so dismissive. I sighed deeply and rested my head against the back of the seat. This is so... Her mother is right there as he's sitting there acting like he didn't do anything wrong. And your mother is sitting right there. You're 12 years old, and this is the way that she is allowing this man to make you feel. It's not like I went to bed with you, Ruthie. And you know I never put nothing inside you. All I did was touch you right here and here and here once in a while. I waited for Mom to be outraged for me, for her to feel the way I did, completely betrayed and violated. Instead, she watched as Lane put his hand over his chest and crotch and shrugged his shoulders. I really do believe all you girls are overreacting. In fact, Ruthie, out of the corner of my eye, I saw his head swivel around in my direction. You liked me touching you. You enjoyed it. As I said, Kathy is a bad mom. I did not, I yelled. Then why did you act like you did? Lane said. I didn't. I hated it. I tried to stop you every time it happened. I hated it. My body sank deeper into the seat with each accusation that my mom, my flesh and blood mother, sitting not 2 feet from me, didn't reject. I felt my chest collapsing in on itself, my breath becoming heavy, almost impossible. Please, Mom, I pled silently, please say something. Lane, Mom said, it doesn't matter whether or not Ruthie enjoyed you touching her. She is a child. You are an adult. You should have known better. What the... She didn't enjoy it. She didn't enjoy it at all. She told you on multiple times to stop. She told her mother, and this is what we're doing? You're abusing her all over again. You're tormenting her all over again. And Lane is getting off on this because he knows that he can keep doing what he's doing because of the fact that this lady has made this okay. I felt as if I entered some sort of backward universe. Mom, he's lying. I never said I liked it. I wanted to jump in the front seat and choke the life out of him. Okay, he shrugged. I guess I misread you. If you don't like it, it won't happen again. It won't, because I won't ever let you near me again. I hate the sight of you. Well, hey, that kind of negative attitude won't help this family at all. He turned back to me. Ruthie, hatred will eat you up inside and take you straight to hell. Read what the Bible says about hateful people and deal with your hatred. Pray about it. Your mom's going to stay here and we're going to try to work things out. So you and I need to learn how to get along. Oh my goodness. Every single chapter of this book is going to have a little triangle in the corner because I'm mad. I gotta laugh because I feel myself wanting to use all types of 4-letter words for this person. Wait, not 4-letter, 5. You can tell how much I curse. I don't even know how many. It seems so inappropriate, but man, I needed that laugh because this is heavy. It's heavy. It's so heavy, guys. Like, I can't imagine this little girl sitting in this car and being tortured like this. And her mother is sitting there allowing it. And then they're misusing the Bible against her. They're misusing whatever their doctrine is against her. It's insane to me. I was furious. How could he be so casual about this? How could he be taking this opportunity to preach to me? Ruthie, Mom said, also turning around. Ruthie, I will not look at you, I said to myself. I hate you. I want you to forgive Lane, and I want you to get over what he did. This is her mother saying this to her. Put it in the past where it belongs. How can she when it keeps happening? I want to keep the family together. Do you want Aaron and Micah and Elena to grow up without a father like you? Oh, wow. So we're going to continue to abuse her further by putting this on her, by making her feel like she's responsible for these kids when he's the vile human being who can't keep his hands to himself, who does inappropriate things. We're going to make this seem like if she keeps speaking against the things that he does and if she doesn't forgive him, then that's going to mess up stuff for his biological kids. You don't have to see him. You can stay away. That way you won't be a temptation anymore. She is blaming her. She is blaming her for this. I finally looked at her. What about Elena, Mom? Have you thought about what might happen to her? Lane whipped around and bared his teeth like an animal, sticking his finger in my face. Hey, I would never do that to any of my own kids. Oh, so it makes it okay because it's not your own kid? You want this to be a father figure and he doesn't even look at me like I'm his own kid? And, oh, it's okay to do it to me, but he wouldn't touch his kids? But it's okay for you to do it to me because I'm not your kid? No, Mom said angrily. It's not okay for him to do that to any kids. And he knows that. And he's promised to stop. And he will, Ruthie, especially now that he knows that it bothers you so much. And as for Elena, I really don't think Lane would be attracted to his own children the way he is to his pretty stepdaughters. This little girl is 12 years old. And listen to all that she's been through. I can't fathom it. I cannot fathom telling people what happened to me and have them, in essence, blame it on me and have them continually being put in a position where you keep allowing her to be hurt. That's not something we have to worry about. I looked up at last, just in time to see Lane shake his head, his lips pursed as if he couldn't believe he was letting himself be subjected to this. All right, asked Mom, catching my glance. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I said rarely. Can you let me out? After a tense second, I heard the passenger door click open. Mom pulled the seat back lever and I pushed the seat forward to crawl out. I couldn't wiggle my body out from behind her fast enough. Wow. Chapter 31. That was not the last of the awkward Chevette tribunals. I'm wondering if no, it's not Chevy because it says Chevette tribunals. The entire summer before I started 6th grade, I was repeatedly summoned to the backseat of the car and lectured by Mom about how my inability to let bygones be bygones was preventing the family from moving forward. Kathy is full of crap. She is full of crap. She was full of crap. Typically, the conversation started with her sharing a piece of inspirational wisdom or reading a passage she found in the Book of Mormon or the Bible. She would talk about how God tests our powers of forgiveness and then call for me to be more Christ-like. And at the end of this conversation, I would bolt out of the Chevette, shrugging my shoulders and staring at the ground because her mother is berating her and her mother is abusing her. I'm going to call it what it is. She's violating her every time she does this. When Mom wasn't traveling with Lane and when I hadn't been left in charge of my younger siblings, I was free to hang out with my friends and explore the countryside. Sally, Cynthia, and I spent a lot of time hiking over hot rocks on the L, swimming at the giant reservoir in front of our yard, going to rodeos and borrowing our brother's horses to go horseback riding. But I still had trouble looking my stepsisters in the eye when I talked to them. Our mother's decision to stay with Lane had been heartbreaking. I was sure they felt the same way. We never spoke to one another about Lane again. It was just too painful. Better to pretend it had never happened, that it wasn't still happening to any of us. I was so angry with Mom that summer that I ran away. We were supposed to take another trip back to El Paso with Lane one morning, and I did not want to go. The night before we were supposed to leave, I got into the hide-a-bed in the living room, fully dressed. I lay awake until I heard everyone in their bedroom snoring. Then, as quietly as I could, and with the slow motion movements necessary for undetected escape, I slipped my feet out of the bed and into the pair of shoes I placed next to it. I took one soundless step, then another, then a third, until I reached the rickety door. The house remained quiet as I took my first step outside under the dark purple sky. I had told a cousin of mine that I wanted to run away, and without asking why, she said I could sleep at her house until I figured out where I was going to go. My plan was to take the bus to San Diego and find Matt. I ran from my mom's house to my cousin's under the dim light of the half moon, praying no one from the colony could see me. Once I got in bed at my cousin's, I lay awake for a few hours imagining what Mom's face would look like in the morning when she'd awake and find the hide-a-bed empty. Then the thought made me feel guilty. My stomach grew tight with knots. I felt justified in my actions, but I didn't want Mom to worry. I would have let her worry, but she loves her mom. I was angry with her, but also desperate for her approval. I stared at the wooden ceiling until I was finally able to sleep. After a fitful night, I woke up with a tight neck and shoulders. I lifted my heavy head off the pillow and peered out the bedroom window to a clear blue sky. Then I saw Mom's car parked on the side of the road outside of the barbed wire fence that surrounded my cousin's yard. Someone had seen me running the night before and had told Mom where to find me. I slowly rose out of bed, turned the knob on the bedroom door with a heavy, reluctant hand, and dragged myself into the living room where Mom was standing, her navy blue purse over her shoulders. She glared at me with the angriest pair of eyes I'd ever seen, then spun around and walked off. "Bye, Ruthie," I heard my cousin say as I walked out of the house. I rolled my eyes, nodded, and made my way to the car. I caught up with Mom, but she didn't say a single word until I clicked the door closed. "What the heck were you thinking?" she screamed. Her voice so loud I thought the windows would shatter. "Is your head in the toilet? I've been looking all over the colony for you. What if a criminal had picked you up on the streets last night? She's living with a criminal, so what does it matter?" What's wrong with you? I slouched forward in the seat and stared at my white tennis shoes, stained permanently from my midnight run. I wanted to crawl into a hole and escape the tirade. I wish she said those last 4 words to Lane instead of me. As we sped down the dirt road, I felt Mom's eyes boring into the side of my head. What Lane did to you wouldn't seem so bad if some old Mexican man got a hold of you, she ranted. I mean, this lady keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Are you freaking kidding me? I couldn't even muster a reply. We rode the rest of the way without speaking. The silence continued after we arrived home. Lane had left for El Paso, and my siblings had been deposited at Susan's house before Mom had gone looking for them. The house was empty. I had followed Mom through the kitchen door. She threw her keys onto the table and walked toward her bedroom. Suddenly, I heard a tremendous voice screaming. It took me a second to realize that the noise was coming from my own throat. Why won't you leave him? I heard myself yell with a burning rage that made my skin hot. Mom turned and faced me with the look of a determined bull staring at a matador's red flag. The force of it had made me step back through the threshold and into the living room. But I couldn't stop that part of me that was crying out, that part of me that no one had listened to. Lane has never done anything for this family. He doesn't even support us. I stared right back into Mom's angry glare. He hardly ever comes home. Why do you keep having babies with him? He is nothing but a worthless asshole. Seeing the look on Mom's face, the shock, the anger, the humiliation, I immediately wished I could suck the words back inside of me. I had to look away and my body began to tremble. I turned back to apologize just in time to see her hand fly at me. She slapped my cheek so hard I almost lost my balance. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror as I fell backward, my body cowering, my eyes wild. I looked like an animal on the side of the road that I barely escaped from being flattened by a truck. Don't you dare speak to me like that. She looked at me for a long time. It's none of your business why I stay with him. She turned and hurried toward her room. I am still your mother and I deserve respect. I disagree. I disagree. You don't show her respect in any way. You don't value your child. You don't love her. You don't protect her. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is chapter after chapter after chapter of Kathy putting a man before her kid. And I'm not okay with that. One day, a few weeks later, as the summer began its transition to the cold desert winds of fall, there was a knock at the door. The man behind it wore a white straw cowboy hat, a thick dark mustache, and glasses with bottle-thick lenses. He greeted us somberly, which is perhaps why I didn't immediately recognize him as a church elder. Mom invited him in, but as soon as he saw the multitude of faces behind her, he asked if he could have a word with her in private outside. I watched them through the foggy film of my breath on the living room window, the two of them leaning against his Ford pickup truck. The man slowly gestured gently with long pauses between his sentences. Mom nodded and cast her eyes at something in the distance. She didn't say a word, never looked directly at the visitor. Finally, Mom came back inside. She told me that the church had decided to hold meetings about some of the gossip they heard about Lane. The allegations that he had been inappropriately touching girls in the colony had made their way to the church elders. Okay, y'all, I can't remember the timeline. Is this because Irene said something? Y'all remind me. And they wanted to separate fact from fiction. Mom, Lane, and all his wives were being summoned to a series of hearings. If the rumors were even partially true, the man said that they would need to take swift action against my stepfather. Weeks earlier, Sally and Cynthia had told me that they discovered that Lane had abused another of their sisters. Rumors of his abuse of several of us had slowly spread throughout the colony. I didn't know how that had happened, as Mom had been determined to keep our problems with the family, and I was never approached or questioned by a soul. Then again, given that Lane had molested at least 4 of us, it was a wonder that the news hadn't spread sooner. Thus began a community tribunal about Lane, and one that I thought would be much fairer than our families in the car. Although neither my stepsisters nor I were ever called to testify, we stayed home and babysat. I spent those nights playing cards with my siblings, doing anything I could to keep my mind off what was being said in the meetings. Interesting that they were never questioned by the elders. I don't expect them to do it in front of everybody, but it's interesting that they were never questioned by the elders. I lie awake in bed, embarrassed at the thought of what Lane might be saying to the church elders, who were also my family. It nauseated me to think that he was telling them that his stepdaughters had enjoyed his advances. I thought about asking to attend a meeting myself to tell the other side of the story, but I doubted anyone would listen to me. What chance did I have of being heard by the leaders of a church who believed its men were training to be gods? Plus, I was too embarrassed and ashamed to discuss the details of what had happened to me in front of all of them. Mom was alone when she returned from the first meeting. In a tired voice, she explained that everyone present had been questioned as in court. Lane sat in front of 12 judges, all male church leaders, and called witnesses, in this case his wives. She said that the church leaders had read passages from the Book of Mormon and the Bible so that the women could understand what child abuse was and how to handle it. Still, Mom seemed to have been more affected by Lane's repentance than the church's warnings. She described his slumped posture, the sad sincerity of his public apology, and of course his tears. Did I have any idea? She wondered how hard it was for him to cry in front of that group of men, his lifelong friends and fellow church elders. The meetings went on for weeks before the elders finally announced that they'd made a decision. The night of the verdict, I had fallen asleep in Mom's bed when I heard the sound of the kitchen door opening. I heard 2 sets of shoes on the cement floor. The light in the bedroom suddenly came on, so bright that it hurt my eyes, and I peered over the blanket. Mom's eyes looked tired, red and swollen, while Lane's looked angry. He took his clothes from the pipe where they had been hanging, folded them, and stuffed them into a black plastic bag. Mom sat on the bed and watched, her expression forlorn. Neither acknowledged me. Lane swiftly exited the bedroom with his bag of clothes, Mom trailing behind him. "Aren't you going to even say goodbye to me?" she pleaded through her tears. This chick is over here crying because he has to go. You can't make this up. "Lane, why won't you say goodbye to me?" He silently strolled through the kitchen and out the door. "Goodbye," she said as he started his truck. "Goodbye," she called out as he drove away. The church leaders had decided to ban Lane from the colony for 2 years, after which they would reconvene to decide whether he should be allowed to return to his families. Mom sobbed as she recounted the events of the evening. In the meantime, the wives have to take turns visiting him out of town or in the States. So you banish him from the colony, but the wives still go and see him? So they did nothing. "So you'll have to be here to watch your brothers and sisters." She said it as if she wanted me to respond sympathetically. She buried her face in her palms. "Oh, Ruthie, what am I going to do? God, how am I going to handle all of this? Why couldn't we just keep this within our own family? Why does the whole town have to know about it?" The weight of her questions felt heavy on me. As I sank deeper into the mattress and tried to think of something to say, you shouldn't have to because your mom's full of crap. Over the next few months, Lane's wives took turns going to care for him. "Why are you sending him away? This is ridiculous." I babysat for days or weeks at a time during Mom's stints with her husband. I didn't enjoy all the chores and the housework that fell to me, but I was so relieved to have Lane gone that I did everything Mom asked of me without complaint or protest. Only a couple months after he left, Mom arrived home from a visit with him, carrying a gallon jar of peanut butter. While my siblings fought each other for a chance to make themselves sandwiches on Mom's stale homemade bread, she took me into her bedroom so we could talk privately. Her face was relaxed and smiling, and I felt myself relaxing too. She hadn't seemed that happy in a long time. Listen, Ruthie, she put her arm around me as we sat together at the bottom of the edge of her bed. Before I left for El Paso, my sister wives and I went to the council and asked if they'd let Lane come home. Way to protect your children. I felt the blood rushing out my face. I looked down and shook my head. Taking care of the farm is too hard without his help, and we feel like this family needs a man around to lead us and to discipline the kids. They need to see their dad once in a while. She sounded calm and almost excited as she spoke, as if she hadn't even considered how I might have felt. And it's unrealistic to make him stay away at all these hotels and make us go out of town to see him. We miss him. And he's lonely without his families. He needs us as much as we need him. My gaze fell to my bare feet. I tried to focus on them to keep from crying. She is not worried at all about her kids. None of them are. Also, Suzanne and I just found out we're both pregnant. I nodded and rolled my eyes. I felt sick at the thought of their still wanting to have sex with Lane after what he had done to their daughters. I have to go. I stood on my legs weakly. Is that it? Well, no, Mom adjusted her glasses. The council thinks Lane has suffered enough for what he did, all the public embarrassment and shame, and he has. Ruthie, more than you can imagine. I pulled my arm away just as she was about to reach for it. So the council decided to let him come back. I nodded to myself, walked through the door and down the hall, hoping I'd be out of the house before she spoke again. But she called out to me. I want you to know that you don't have to see him or be around him anymore. You can leave and spend the night at Sally's or Maria's house whenever it's his turn to sleep here. By then, I was walking out the door of the house. I could still hear Mom, but her voice sounded distant and small, as thin as the promises that fell from her lips. I swear to you, Ruthie, if anything happens again, I'll be the first to take him to the authorities. Why? Nothing's gonna happen. In yet another chapter read where I'm leaving pissed off. I have no words. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. These kids aren't protected. These women don't care. They're more concerned about themselves than they are about their kids. And I don't like it. Let me know your thoughts down below. Like the video as it helps me get in the algorithm. There are people who are just discovering my sister wives book reading because of this. So please know that every like, every share helps. I appreciate you guys so much. And hopefully Ruthie breaks his fingers in the next chapter. Until next time.